Hello and welcome to this episode of PMC Studio, the interview show for Portland Media Center's Studio Workshop. I'm Jean Haney, your host for this episode. Each episode is an interview with someone doing interesting things in the greater Portland area, while people who want to learn how to use our studio and its equipment get experience taping the show. Tonight my guest is Jesse Leighton, a board member for Acorn Productions. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Jean.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So let's start with an introduction.
Sure.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to be on the board of Acorn Productions.
Sure. I've been doing theater for a long time, and leaving high school, one of my first plays was actually that wasn't for school, was out of the Maine Playwrights Festival, which is still going on, and it was directed by Michael Levine, who was the artistic director at Acorn for years and years. And I just had a really great experience with that. It was the first time that I had worked with anybody who was writing, that the writer was in the room at the same time. So I remember ad-libbing something and he put it into the show. So it was just a very interesting experience. And since then I had done many of them before. They used to have a naked Shakespeare group, which would do Shakespeare scenes out in public. So I was involved with that briefly and eventually wrote my own. And I had moved away for a while, and when I came back, someone that I knew, Amanda Painter, who's now the president of the board there, asked if I wanted to join. And I had very good memories of being with Acorn before, so here I am.
Okay, that's wonderful. For people that aren't familiar with Acorn Productions, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, it's gone through many different iterations. Like a long time ago, it was at the Oak Street Theater, and then they've had the Maine Playwrights Festival, which used to be at the St. Lawrence, and for a long time we've had a good relationship with the Portland Stage Studio space. And from there was a time we had a physical location at the Dana Warp Mill for many years, where we used to hold all of our classes. And from that, we had a little performance space where we could do full play versions directed by local writers, and which is a really good way to expand sort of what we were doing. Now we have the Maine Playwrights Festival, and we have our classes, which aren't in Westbrook anymore, but they still run on fall and winter semesters, and they're still working in the same way to bring people who might not necessarily feel welcome in other places, or to expand what they've done before. I was primarily an actor, but wrote my first thing for Acorn, and I've seen other people come in and either learn, whether it's writing, directing, or like design. They get into different things either through classes or anywhere else, and then suddenly that becomes a part. They find something else that they like to do for it, and then go with it.
That sounds great. So Acorn is known for supporting new and emerging playwrights, young playwrights. What sort of things do you do to encourage them and to motivate them to go further with playwriting?
Yeah, we have, throughout the years, there's been like some different versions where we've had different setups. Like there was one where we had the first act was 4 short plays and the last act was a full 1 act. This year we're focusing all on 10-minute plays, and the point of that is that there are throughout the country all kinds of places that do specifically 10-minute festivals, that you have these specific rules and guidelines for it, and then they put them up. So the hope for this season is that we'll have a whole bunch of plays that when we workshop and we bring in our writers and our executive director and everything, and all of the authors will be able to be there for rehearsal and to see how the play sounds and to make their edits, and hopefully to send them out so they can have lives in other places where they can be in other festivals or other collections, and to keep them, going, living longer than just the one festival.
That sounds great. You mentioned the Maine Playwrights Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what makes it special?
Yeah, it's every year, usually in the fall or in November and December, there'll be a deadline for submission. So anybody who's local to the state can submit their script, and then we usually have a read team of 4 people from different theater backgrounds, and they do the very difficult process of we get all, these amazing plays, and sometimes you could accept 20 of them in a show that would run 3 hours a night. So they have to pare them down to these 8 plays for this particular, I believe it's actually 9 this year, that all sort of work together. So they're looking at, both the quality, which is we have so much of it, and then kind of how they fit together to make a cohesive program. And what's really magical about it, as someone who's been a performer in it a lot, is seeing them develop, both with, like, anytime you do a show, you find things with the director and the cast, but there's this extra element when you have the person there with you that just changes it, and you're making these characters often for the first time. So things that you do are like idiosyncrasies. We had that one act, I was acting in it, and we kind of got in a tangent in a rehearsal, and suddenly there was this whole monologue about all of that we had just come up from there that didn't exist before. And so both as being able to see somebody watch something sort of grow up around them for the first time is very magical, and then to feel that much more intimately connected with like a character and a piece and like sort of everybody that's there is something that is, you don't quite get that experience from any other published pieces that are already out.
Yeah, wow. Can you tell me a little about what stood out to you, like maybe one particular play that stood out to you from the last Playwrights Festival that you did?
Yeah, there was one piece that we're actually doing, I'm directing a version of it for the upcoming fundraiser that we're doing, and it performed in the festival last year. And it's this very nice, like, our new artistic director is like, this is the perfect 10-minute play. It's called Insectarium, and it's about this woman who works at a museum, and she realizes that the cockroaches don't have enough, like there's not enough of them, like they're missing. And then her boss, who's trying to, who doesn't even pay attention to it. And so sort of the way that the obsessiveness about the insects and trying to like be heard in that way kind of branches out to all these other things. It was a very interesting way of taking a tangible topic and then using that to explore all kinds of things in a very, very succinct amount of time.
Okay, and when will this happen? The next Playwrights Festival, and how do people go to it? Do they have to pay? Is it free?
Yeah, the Playwrights Festival will run May 9th through the 18th at the Portland Stage Studios place over on Forest Avenue, and their tickets should be up for that fairly soon on our acornproductions.org website, and you can also get them at the door. They're usually between like $15 to $20 a ticket, though. If anyone wanted to see them and had a hard time, obviously there could be payment plans or other things we could see. Like we want people to see these shows. Yeah.
And you mentioned that it was a fundraiser, so
yeah.
Is that one of the only fundraisers you do for the year, or are there more?
For a specific fundraiser, this is a sort of an annual thing that we've been doing the past couple of years. This one is March 7th. It's going to be at 3 of Strong, and is going to have a silent auction that's going on with all kinds of things that you can get, and there's going to be a stage reading of 5 short plays, including pieces from basically throughout the history of the Playwrights Festival. So this is Liz Carlson's first year as artistic director of it, and so we're gathering a bunch of things that were involved before to kind of have all different, eras of it for this.
Yeah. How many people are in? Are they members, or how do you? What's the troupe called? How many people are in Acorn Productions?
The people that either write or act tend to come in either from auditions or from sending their pieces in, so those can vary depending on the production. There's 6 board members and then 3 who direct our classes and our Playwrights Festival.
Great, thanks very much for that. Welcome back to PMC Studio. I'm here with Jesse Leighton from Acorn Productions. Jesse, how does Acorn Productions engage with the local community beyond the stage?
Yeah, we have about 2 semesters a year. We'll have 3 to 4 classes that will explore different aspects of theater. So usually there's one acting class. This go around, it is a Shakespeare-oriented acting class. There's also usually a playwriting element, and this last semester there was a lighting design class. This year is a sort of design and like props design class for somebody who wants to make stuff for the stage, or even like figurines for games or anything like that. So we try to find a different curriculum each year to explore some different avenues, and also we have a few high schools reach outs that will have different classes, and which are usually more playwriting focused. So before the main Playwrights Festival begins, there'll be a certain night where the family and the folks who went through that program can hear their pieces read too. So that's some ways that we get out.
Yeah, nice. That was going to be my next question, was what sort of things you do to engage with students, to do outreach. So I think that unless there's more, you probably covered that one just there.
Yeah, the high school one's been going on for a long time, and we're looking to expand a middle school monologue program, and so we're looking for partners for that right now. But yeah, it's been a focus of the company for a while.
Okay, and changing gears a little bit, what do you consider the biggest challenges for small theaters today?
Well, certainly any of us that are in town know that the rents are always high, So finding the space to do it is always, and we've got a good relationship with Portland Stage for the Playwrights Festival, so that's been amazing to be able to be there. And Acorn has had a couple of different homes throughout its history, and same thing with other groups. I think being able to perform the pieces that you want and be able to make that sustainable is always something that's difficult in a small space, especially with high rent costs, which then can lead to needing to have higher ticket prices, and then you're worried about like who can access what you're doing, and so it's like the financial aspects are always the parts of it that are sometimes a struggle to piece together. But we have our fundraisers and the Playwrights Festival, and through other grant work, we piece it together.
Yeah, that's great. So theater, we know, has the power to bring people together. Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of a story or performance that had a significant impact on the community?
I can think of some that have brought a lot of people that wouldn't have known each other together a lot. Like, I remember being with a group for a Playwrights Festival like this, and from that it began to create its own community. So that spun off into somebody took a piece that they had that was just in the back of their mind, but then they knew all of these other creative people from being involved in the process with it before, and got to put on a reading of his own piece in a different space. So I think, especially as we're more and more, it can be harder to get outside and to get around, people both in the winter here and also just everything post COVID and getting used to all of that, and that the ability to remember that we're still there together like that can be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and what about an example of a production that really touched people's hearts or had them leaving thinking of something they hadn't thought about before?
Ooh, we're gonna have to give me a second while I try to
That's
roll the
okay.
decks. Those to think of the best example for this.
Well, you can think about it for
Yeah.
a few minutes, and we might circle around back to it.
Okay.
How do you get new members or new actors and new playwrights into the troupe?
Yeah, we have auditions every year for the festival, and our artistic director reaches out to people who are both reading and who will eventually direct those pieces, and then we get obviously our writers every year, and we're looking to do some other things like have potentially a writers group that is ongoing so that people can get involved and then continually begin developing those pieces and new pieces together, and a situation where you might be able to have multiple writers giving each other feedback to different aspects of their pieces, and in that way we could foster more of a continual troupe that's, rather than switching over our playwrights and our actors every year, there's also a stable of folks who have been there working together for a long time. So I think that's something that we're are having in mind to develop later as part of the connections that we already have to people around that are all working on things and want their stuff read, and for it to be, fed off of the energy of everyone else and the things that they'll bring to the table. So that would be very exciting to have that.
Okay, that sounds good. So upcoming events. So we talked a little bit about the Maine Playwrights Festival.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that people should be looking to come to at Acorn Productions in the first half of the year, per se?
Yeah, we have the festival. We also have coming up in April a stage movement class, like a one-day workshop, and that design class that focuses on theatrical design and props, and those are both, you can find out information, both of those, on acornproductions.org, and those will be coming up in the spring. After the Playwrights Festival ends, usually our next round of classes will begin in the fall, and we will have those up closer to when registration opens for that. And those would also be, again, you'd have an acting, a playwriting, and a design element for those. And hopefully we will also have that ongoing reader circle that comes up soon.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your the direction Acorn Productions is going in, the dreams for the future. In a couple of years, what do you hope you've turned into? This would be sort of like board discussions to sort of steer the future, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think the main focus of Acorn is always allowing people different ways to branch out. So whether that's somebody who has been a performer and is interested in getting into the more technical side, then they have that opportunity, or vice versa. If somebody wants to get on stage, or to, whether it's literally with classes or with learning or submitting a piece, or even just finding a group of people together to then explore with. So I think we're keeping that as our kernel, and as different things expand, we will have different groups that can keep finding different ways to let people grow, and we're just starting these design classes, and hopefully that will lead to something where if you don't have access to. You don't necessarily know anybody who works with lights or sound or anything like that. And just jumping in with another production company might seem daunting, but hopefully we can give that space to get the knowledge and the terminology involved to feel more comfortable to explore and to build. And I think we're always looking, whether it's for us or other people to partner with who are also looking for both space and opportunity to take artists who are working in one genre or another and allow them to stretch and express in other ways.
That's wonderful. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to PMC Studio with tonight's guest, which is Jesse Leighton from Acorn Productions. So Jesse, we've talked a bit about Acorn, but let's talk about you now.
All right.
What's one of your favorite plays or performances of all time?
One of my favorite plays was Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, which I did get to do for like a couple of teeny tiny productions in the snow in like February many years ago. So that was a real treat.
Okay, and what was it about it that makes it your favorite?
I've always liked the way how sparse it is and how it just deals with anticipation and having to figure out something to do with the boredom of waiting, sometimes for something that doesn't show up or that what shows up isn't what you expect. And we did it in English. It was originally written in French because Beckett said that was the easiest language to write nothing in. So it's just a bunch of people trying to figure out how to stay in this space and wait for the thing that they want. And there is something about the bare bones nature of that just is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, well, if it's in French, it would sound beautiful too. So.
Yes, that's right.
When did you know that you wanted to be a playwright?
I had always made a lot of stories, and I did a lot of writing, and I also got into theater fairly young, and even as a high schooler was trying to do fan fictions of Star Wars or something that could be on stage. And but I really, something that intrigues me about what you're deciding to write is why is this one a play, or why is this a novel? And something that's very interesting to me about writing plays is the ability and the necessity for interpretation afterwards. So you're writing something that's supposed to be elastic and to be able to be changed and interpreted and have, people to take the themes and characters that you're working with and bring anything else to it. Whereas something like a novel is much more sort of egomaniacal in terms of it's just you, it's all that's there. And I think thinking about giving actors things to work with, or clues to suss out, or things that you can have directors take and interpret in different ways, those in the constraints of the stage, where unlike a movie or something, you can just go to different sets, or a book where you can write whatever. How do you make this make sense in this in this much more closed setting is very fascinating.
Yeah. So when did you know the moment, maybe you didn't have a breakthrough moment, but if there were one, when did you know that you could really do this for your life versus it being a hobby that you enjoyed when you were young?
Well, I think depending on your definition, it still can be a hobby. And I think sometimes finding a way to keep it as your art rather than as necessarily your income was something that I spent a long time in, about 9 years in California, and kind of kept running up against that, where you would have offers to do, you're trying to focus your image really intently on becoming a product, essentially, whether it's your pieces or your acting or your music or anything like that. And that raises a question, whereas do you want to aim to do that, or support yourself in other ways and then make art that appeals to you on potentially a non-commercial basis? And I ended up thinking the other way about it. So whether it's self-publishing some novels or working on stage work or finding other ways, like through Acorn, to bring different groups together and see those kind of things develop, aren't necessarily pay the bills things, but are things that are that feel much more artistic than, really trying to hammer in that one little typecast that you could do if they need bikers for a commercial or something like that.
Okay. And who are some of the artists, living or dead, who have inspired you? And if there were one that you could spend a little time with talking to, who would that be?
Oh, and that can be tough, because there's always a thing about not necessarily wanting to meet your heroes because of how that can go. But I think somebody that I have seen talk and think that it would be a good conversation would be a novelist, Andre Aciman, who wrote the novel that the movie Call Me By Your Name is based on. And I've always loved the way that he writes thought, which I was very surprised that the movie ended up working, because it's so in everyone's head. But and hearing him talk about it the same way, about getting carried away, even as the writer, in their thoughts, and how it sort of lifts up, and you can sort of feel the same energy from the person as you do from the work involved. I think that would be a good conversation.
Okay. And changing angles a little bit, what would be something about running a theater company that would surprise people? Oh, how much stuff you end up with in some way. Like you end up with a whole warehouse of things that you keep thinking that you're going to need again. Like at some point, someone is going to need this crown, and you might have had it for 10 years, and as soon as you get rid of it, there's suddenly another crown that you're going to need. But the space for all of those things is something that is always a constant negotiation, is to figure out, which things do we keep, whether it's flats or props or just curtains. And I think keeping a wrangle of all of that is something that maybe is slightly surprising. Yeah, especially if you have to move around a lot because of space and rents and that sort of thing. Let's talk about Acorn again and how people can get involved with it, whether they're donors, volunteers, performers, playwrights. Tell us how people can get involved with Acorn.
Absolutely. So there's always the just straight option to donate at acornproductions.org. We're also doing our fundraiser on March 7th, which will have a $30 ticket to get in, and then there'll be 5 stage readings and a bunch of other silent auction items, whether it's books or hotel stays or maybe musical instruments. There'll just be a whole bunch of things that are there. And on our website, there's different email addresses if you want to volunteer. We can, whether it's helping out with an event or in tech, or just even to just introduce yourself. That like I'm a lighting designer who would like to work on something. Then those avenues are always open, and we're hoping to create a good sort of volunteer pool, both on stage and off, that going forward, we will have multiple people that can help with that. Or even if it's somebody who doesn't necessarily want to be on stage, but wants to help with social media postings or finding connections with businesses or space and things like that.
Okay, one more quick question,
Yeah.
and then I think we're going to need to wrap up.
Okay.
What advice do you have to young people who are thinking maybe they want to get involved with theater or playwriting?
That finding your voice is something that can be hard to hold on to. You know, when you're going in, you're going to get a lot of really good advice that will raise the floor on a lot of what you're doing, whether it's writing techniques or acting techniques, and keeping the thing that's you while incorporating those things is something that for me took a very long time and sometimes still does. So that would be, so keeping yourself in all of the technique would probably be my number one thing.
Okay, well, I've really enjoyed talking with you. It's been
enjoyed
very
being
interesting. But that's it for this edition of PMC Studio. We're proud of our brave studio workshop participants who have been operating the cameras and directing the show with little or no prior experience. If you've seen anything that looked off, that's because they're just learning. So can you. Just visit our website, portlandmedia.org, and choose workshops and get involved at the top of our homepage. Also, if you would like to appear as a guest or would like to interview someone for a future workshop show, please contact PMC at portlandmedia.org, Brendan at portlandmedia.org, or Cindy at portlandmedia.org, and let us know. I'd like to thank Jesse for joining me, and I'd like to thank all of you for watching. Until next time.